Oh, the world sure feels noisy and a little unmoored. Same power structures and playbooks, different decade, but same outcomes. What? We need to change the game. But Women Advancing isn't about fixing women. We're busy reorienting leadership for the world we're living in and the one ahead. I'm your host, Kate Byrne. Each week, I talk with the women shaping what's next. Join us as we reset the compass on Women Advancing. Hey everyone, it's your host Kate Byrne of Women Advancing. You know, we talk a lot about empowering women and overcoming the lack of self-confidence in business, right? Have we ever thought to consider that perhaps the root cause runs a whole lot deeper and can be attributed to something seemingly not related at all? Because it's hard to lead, learn, or fully show up when your most basic health needs aren't being met, and no one wants to talk about it. Significant shame. That's why I'm so glad to be joined today by two young founders and officers, Avery Bruen and Brooke Blankenship, who are the founder and president and vice president, respectively, of EmpowerHer, an organization tackling period poverty and feminine health head-on by educating communities and getting essential products into the hands of girls and women who need them most. You know, I first ran into these two through a LinkedIn post, and I was so intrigued by this business. Because how does this relate to female founders, executives, and investors? Deeply, as the struggles and the business savvy required of these two are the same that you and I have had to deal with every day in our professional lives. In fact, the through line in corporate to professional and corporate realms, man, it's uncanny. In our conversation, we talk about why access to period products is a leadership issue, not just a side issue, how shame and silence still shape opportunity, how to navigate distribution challenges, supply and demand, scaling, what it looks like to build a mission-driven organization, one that's rooted in dignity, education, and real-world impact. Imagine creating a legacy when you are 20 and 22 and you started when you were 17. Brooke and Avery share the moment they realized something as ordinary as a period could quietly determine whether a girl shows up to school, work, or even her own potential. So if you've ever wondered how equity actually works on the ground or how small and practical interventions can unlock enormous change, come on in, listen up, and stay to the end where I'll share my KB takeaways. And let me know what else you'd like to hear and from whom. All right, let's take a listen. Women Advancing listeners, what a way to kick off a year has been power-packed. And this one is particularly near and dear to all of our hearts as we have two young founder and vice president who have started something in high school, continuing to grow it through college, and they've got such vision for the future. And it's really about providing equity and access to something we all need on a regular basis. And that is, feminine health care and specific products as well. So with that, I'm going to welcome to Women Advancing the founder and president of EmpowerHer, Avery Bruen, and her vice president, Brooke Blankenship.
Hi, thanks for having us. We're so excited.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. And so, the way I found out about these two really was in my LinkedIn feed. And it really struck me what they had started. So I'm going to take a moment and kind of dive right in. And while we're talking with each other, perhaps you can kind of wend your specifics about each other in, like where you got your start, what you're currently doing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Avery, what I would love is, could you provide just a brief overview of what EmpowerHer and the services it provides are?
Yeah, so basically EmpowerHer is a student-led organization based in Charlottesville, but we do surround the other fellow counties, I guess you could say. So that includes some in Louisa, Orange, Madison, so on. And essentially we supply different menstrual products and educational pieces to these schools. So early on, I would like to say it was about 2022. I was a sophomore in high school, and a fellow senior and I had begun EmpowerHer. It originally only started at Albemarle High School because we noticed a lack in menstrual products, not only in general, but also just the consistency of them being provided by the school but also just the type of products that were provided were very inadequate and commonly thrown away, destroyed, misused, or just lacking in general. And so through that, we wanted to make a change. And so we started doing different community drives to essentially collect products. And then kind of once we saw the support that we got and how many people wanted to contribute and become involved, then we were able to grow throughout the county.
Which is fantastic. And this is one of the things that really caught my eyes when I read the post in LinkedIn. Again, there seems to be, I'm focusing a lot this new season, focusing quite a bit on intergenerational work, but also finding gaps and filling them.
Yeah.
And just having the courage, because prior to this, had you all had any experience at all doing this kind of thing?
No.
No, we didn't know if it was even possible. And so that's another thing too, is just kind of, we started small just in Albemarle. Avery and I both graduated there last May. And so we've kind of started small and just slowly become more comfortable with kind of expanding the outreach that we've kind of grown.
Which I love, because it's just, again, it's that proof that sometimes these gaps are so huge, and that's why a number of people end up not doing anything about it because they think it's too big, I won't be able to make a dent. And the truth is, and I have great respect for you both, is that it's step by step by step by step by
It's
step.
a hard and long process, but it's definitely fulfilling.
So talk a little bit. I know you grew from this neighborhood donation drive, right? To this now serving over something like 11,000 students, right? Yeah. What did those early days teach you about the scope of the need?
It was definitely a love of labor, I will say, in the beginning.
No pun intended, everyone, kind of in a weird way.
So basically, in the beginning, it was a lot of work, but it was definitely very fulfilling. We would do these neighborhood drives, and lucky enough for us, we started in December. So it included a lot of cold, dark nights going from doorstep to doorstep. We would create these little tags that we would essentially place on the doorknobs or mailboxes saying a little bit about our mission, what we were asking for, how they could contribute online or in person, and then when our pickup date would be. And so a couple of days later, after we dropped off these different tags, we would then come back and collect the products. And we started with smaller neighborhoods here and there. And then once we got emails and different online donations and realizing like how big this could grow, then we started moving on and covering large tasks. And lucky enough, I've had a good community of friends and family members that were willing to contribute and help with these drives. That was definitely a lot of support.
I want to go a little bit deeper into that. I'll do that a little bit later, but just because I am betting, AKA hoping, that everyone who's listening will say, oh my gosh, I wonder how I could get this started or how I could get it activated in my respective county, state area. But we'll put a pause. I will not get it.
We'll get back to that. Yeah.
So Brooke, share a little bit to the listeners who may not really understand, this notion of period poverty. What does it actually look like inside schools, and what are some of the stories that stay with you?
Yeah, so I came on in 2023, about a year or two after Avery and Waning had founded the organization. And so I think the biggest thing that really kind of started our just immense support that we've gotten in the past couple of years was spreading the awareness. And I think we see this in government and politics all the time, but you got to prove to people that there is a problem, right? And that problem not only exists, but that it also affects people, or else, why are they going to do anything about it? And so we spent a lot of time gathering testimonies from different students. It was something we both noticed personally in our own lives, that we would walk into our bathrooms in Albemarle High School, and the machines that they'd have with menstrual products would often be not stocked. And you go to a different bathroom, that one wouldn't be stocked either. And if they were, the products were very, very low grade. And we were like, this cannot be the best solution. So that's kind of our biggest thing. It's not necessarily only just the access to the products, but access to quality products themselves. And so, once we started talking about this, we found that it wasn't something that, we were just noticing, that it was a big problem that was happening in a lot of schools, even outside of Albemarle County.
And I can tell you, it's something that a lot of older listeners experience every day at work.
Yeah.
Right? In fact,
I feel like another big barrier that isn't really talked about as much with period poverty is the economic aspect. Because what a little statistic for you, since 2019, period products, the cost of them has risen almost 40%.
Oh my God.
That in itself is crazy. And so understanding that, let alone grown adults can't always afford that, students can't always afford that. So that's kind of what Brooke was talking about, just not access to products in general, but also like adequate and high grade products. That is so important, you know?
That's astonishing to me. I want to do a little research into why the heck
Right.
that kind of a rise. Ugh.
Another thing we've looked at too is that obviously EmpowerHer was founded post-pandemic. And so we like one of the things that we always do is try to do a bunch of research. So we walk in, like when we come onto things like this, or we, go to the board or whatever we're doing, we try to, bring some research along with us, because obviously we see it in schools, but the people that we're trying to get support from may not necessarily ever been to a bathroom in Albemarle High School. So it is interesting to look at the statistics. And in 2018, it was like 2 in 5 of, people with periods struggled to purchase products at some point, in their lives from, a lack of income or whatever it was. But we saw that number raised by, I think it was like 35-40%. We did a study on this a couple months ago. But yeah, it raised a lot from just, I think it was 2018 to 2021. This was a study done by Kotex. It's just interesting to me, the effect that the pandemic had on, I think that caused an increase in people not being able to afford the products because people were struggling with their jobs after the pandemic, but also the products themselves became more expensive. And so that's just always something that's interesting to me, is kind of gauging the demand and, how all that's been kind of changing.
And I think kind of like going off the pandemic, because there was a lot of awareness in media press about like housing costs and the raise in food prices, but this is something that's not really talked about. And so I think this kind of goes into the idea of period poverty, because it's not just products themselves, but also the education surrounding it.
Mm-hmm. I think education in every sense of that word is so assumed. Mm-hmm. Right? I think everyone thinks of, when they think of this kind of a conversation and this part of our lives, everyone thinks, oh, okay, that's taken care of in sex ed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So check, but that's not really the education that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It goes so far beyond that.
Right.
100%. That's a big part of our mission. So when we drop off products to schools, a lot of times we'll also drop off, maybe it's just, 25, 50 flyers for because a lot of times we'll put the products and we'll drop them off, and we have these little boxes which we can show, but the boxes will go in the bathrooms. And so a lot of times we provide educational materials to hand out to schools with those products. So that's just a big thing too, is just teaching the community what we really mean. What is period poverty? What's the difference between, equality and equity? All these little things that, like you said, are just assumed that people know, but then you start talking to people and you're like, wait, we actually don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. So that's been something that we've really worked on the past couple of years, of getting news coverage and things, and just having these conversations that are often really stigmatized.
Now, this feels like an obvious question, but have you all gone to, you mentioned Kotex, so have you gone to the manufacturers themselves?
No, but one of our main goals, and also things that we've done in the past, is just reaching out to organizations, whether they're small local businesses or larger ones, whether it's just to get donations, products, or just more press. That's definitely something we want to focus on in this new year of 2026, is just expanding. And a big part, I think, of building your network is just cold emailing people, cold calling people, because a lot of the time you're going to get a better response than you thought, because so many people want to help with our mission. It's just kind of figuring out how exactly they're intertwined. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I've got to tell you, I got to believe that all of the manufacturers of the products would be curious and willing to at least have a conversation, because for them, it's just it's demonstrating purpose-driven leadership and community involvement, something that they as a corporation, but also, let's face it, probably over half of their employees fall within this category. So they want to be, represented and have their opportunity too. Okay, so I'm going to shift a smidge now. You're talking about cold emails and essentially being taken seriously. So you're youth-led. How have you navigated being taken seriously? 1, are people respectful? And then 2, how do you balance school, life, leadership, this? I mean, it's like bang, 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 because this is essentially almost like well, it's like
Full-time
raising a
job.
little family, right? Yeah, it's a lot.
100%. Yeah. Especially, since this wasn't something that existed before, it's a little bit more than just like showing up to a club meeting. We do have to put, like Avery said, a labor of love into it. But I think when it comes to being taken seriously, we've found, I know it's kind of cliche, but really just like being able to take yourself seriously first. And so, I feel like we've been really good about working, efficiently together. And also when we come into things and when we, present this problem and present our organization, we try to have all the facts and all the statistics and just be really professional about it. But like we've kind of already talked about, I think spreading awareness and showing people that the problem actually exists and that we're not just kind of making this up. I think that kind of starts the conversation off good. And they're like, oh, okay, maybe they're onto something here. And so we do a lot of outreach within Charlottesville. It's a really good place just to stir around ideas. And so when I first came on, so I started like August of 2023, like that first school year of our junior year, Avery, or sophomore year?
Yeah, junior
year. Yeah, junior year of high school. But that October in 2023, we were given this opportunity to come speak at the ACPS, the Albemarle County Public School Board. They have this school health advisory board meeting. I think it's once every 2 or 3 months. I can't remember exactly. But they invited us to come talk about EmpowerHer and its mission and what we've done, specifically more focused in obviously the Albemarle Public Schools. But we walked into that meeting and obviously it was scary we're with all these like kind of high level administrative people, but we walked in, we dressed up, whatever. And we had our little flyers we gave out. We spoke very calmly. We gave them the statistics. We showed them what we had noticed. We also brought stories from our peers and what they had noticed. And I think that's really like where it started is once they realized how big of an issue that this was and that we were simply just the ones presenting it to them, I think that really helped them to not only take us seriously, but also the issue itself, which is obviously the most important thing. So I think just kind of showing up with that passion behind the cause and also just making sure you have the research also really helped.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like a big part of how we've been able to keep EmpowerHer so impactful is that other people also have this passion. We've had so many younger girls reach out to be a part of this. And so that's how we've kind of kept it active in school systems. So we have different representatives and current presidents within each school kind of distributing the products and keeping the Instagram and media account going just so we can keep it passed down, but also so we can keep an overlook over it all, And I feel like between balancing everything is when you take on something like this, an organization like this, or a mission like this, the way to keep it truly consistent and impactful is to have passion for what you're actually doing. And I feel like it's very easy for people to want to make a difference, but not really sure how. So they join a bunch of random clubs or just do different things that like technically look good, but they're not really like fully committed to it. The thing with EmpowerHer is I think every single person that we've had work within it and around it and just helped us in general has been passionate about the topic. And so even though it takes a lot of hours and a lot of emails and a lot of rejection sometimes, it's the fact that we actually care about our mission is what keeps it going.
I think that really showed through. So like when we went to that board meeting, they could tell that, I think people can tell when you're trying to do something just to put it on your resume versus it's like a problem we actually care about and genuinely want to support. And I think that really shined through in that meeting because we ended up getting a grant through Albemarle County Public Schools to kind of help fund EmpowerHer.
Fantastic. Well, yeah. And two things there. One, also that group, many of them have had to, were women, so they have experience as well, and or they all have, majority probably have daughters or nieces or neighbor girls, or you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So it's something, to your point, that everyone can relate to. And I think, we so go about our daily lives and we just take certain things for granted. And right. And as I'm going to say, older generation, I think there's just so many assumptions. You never thought about it. Of course, it's just the way it's always been until someone such as yourselves waltzes in and say, okay, well, wake up, Mrs. Van Winkle. It has changed and it is not exactly the same and the way it used to be.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is also with our specific topic of period poverty, the stigma around it. It's so because it's an uncomfortable topic, some would like to say, it's often gets pushed to the side or just as you were saying, everything's just assumed. The education about it is assumed. Period. People just get their products from somewhere. I don't know. It just all
figure it out. Yeah.
But that's not the truth. That's not the reality. And the reality is so many people struggle with this and also just aren't educated about it. And so I think by kind of just breaking past the stigma, it opens up a whole new world of education and knowledge, which is so important.
And exactly, and then it also in a sort of a waterfall effect, if you will. There's been so much data about how everyone, especially in the younger set, high school, younger on, college too, are suffering so much from anxiety, and this is one thing that just can really help to a degree. This one less thing they have to feel anxious about or ashamed of, or because women throughout the centuries, we've always felt shameful about something.
Yeah.
Right.
And
There's so many things to be anxious about. This should not be one of them.
Exactly.
One story that we have so a lot of times we work with the school nurses at different schools to kind of work with them to kind of gauge how many products that we need. And it was in the fall and it was getting ready to go winter break. And we had one of the nurses, I forget which school it was, reached out to us and said, "Hey, Brooke and Avery, is there any way you guys can just give us all like extra products?" And we're like, this is a lot more than what, like, we hadn't even thought about it, but these students were coming into the nurse's office and asking if they could have some menstrual products to bring home with them for break because they weren't going to be able to
have it.
And like, that's something that we, again, take for granted that Avery and I are both very privileged. That's not something we've ever had to really worry about, but it is the reality for so many different students. And so that, I think, really opened our eyes into, wow, like, there is definitely a need here. And so we did our best to kind of support that. And so it's just been really interesting to see kind of how the demand varies between school to school and how, we can do our best to support that.
Yeah. Avery, I wanted to ask you, as we're sort of shifting into sort of beginning stages of distributions, one question I have is, what did it take to kind of shift from this charitable model, which you still are doing, but I mean, going around door to door, to a sustainable infrastructure so that okay, on a pretty regular basis, we're going to have X amount of product, or we're going to be able to deliver this to this school at this time?
Right. So it kind of began it was definitely smaller when it began, obviously. And so it took some trial and error, but as we began to collect products, we were lucky enough to start with a very large starting supply, almost more than we can ask for just for Almora. And so by starting off with that large bulk of products, it really set us up for a good path. And as we began to expand, we kind of learned the different supply and demand based off the school, the location, and just how frequently they needed these products. And so it took a little while, but we kind of got into like the rhythm of like, oh, this school might request a refill 2 times a month, or maybe even once every 2 months. Like, it's not always super constant, but it just kind of understanding what each school needs, because some are larger, some are smaller. But that also counts for within our own school. So we've done a couple different tactics. Some include, like, when the boxes would be empty in Almora High School, we would have a QR code on the box that says, "Hey, scan this," and request more products, whether it's pads or tampons, and just what bathroom it's in, so it would make it more accessible. Or sometimes we'll just get text, be like, "Hey, this one's empty," or an email from the nurses that we work with. And so I think the key to all of this was just like understanding the flow of products, unintended, but also just having that good base of products, because then it was like we didn't have to constantly be doing drives because we put so much effort into initially starting up the organization.
Yeah. And with all this sort of behind the scenes work of distribution, storage, logistics, all that, Brooke, we'll start with you. What do you think would surprise people the most about what it actually takes to keep EmpowerHer running?
I think so. Coming from a marketing perspective, I think we do a good job at when we do like our press and things, that we make it seem like it's this perfect, system that we've implemented in all these schools, which is true. We do have a really good system that works really well, but it is not glamorous by any means. One thing I'd say that maybe not surprises, but people just don't think about, we don't have the funds to be able to like mail all of these products to schools. So everything that we do, all the 40,000 plus products we've raised, 11,000 students that we're serving, we hand distribute all these products. So it would be Avery and I taking the morning off of school, driving to Madison County High School to go, talk to their nurses, or, driving out to Crozet to go to Western. Like, there was just so much time put into this. And so that's kind of something that, we spent a lot of time doing. And it was a really big problem whenever we both graduated. We're like, oh, how are we going to continue this? So I think just there's a lot of logistical things that go into it. And it's really just making sure everything's, organized, we're coordinated and everything, and just troubleshooting. Like we had in Albemarle High School did this big renovation of their bathrooms, and they've turned the bathrooms into, how would you even describe it, Avery?
It was essentially, so we started with two traditional separated by female and male bathrooms. Oh. And so that made it a lot easier because we could just put the boxes in the female restrooms, right? But they did this renovation where it was essentially a hallway with different unisex stalls kind of. And this was kind of a struggle we fought because sadly, when you put period products in a unisex bathroom, there's a higher chance that they will be tampered with, destroyed, thrown away.
It sounds crazy, but this really was a problem we faced for a couple of months.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so we kind of had to, and we were like, okay, well, I think there was 16 stalls in this giant bathroom. We're like, do we put a box in each stall? That's a lot of products. So it's just little things like that we would be troubleshooting. But eventually, Avery and I are a very good team. We always work it out. So it's just a lot of, conversations, time, effort, energy. But again, it's really because we have the passion behind it that we don't mind to do it.
So yeah, do talk about how you do have a great vibe with each other as far as the team. So how do you do that?
I think it all kind of began because originally we met as teammates on a sport. And so we were kind of used to that dynamic. Mm-hmm. And through that, we became really close friends. And when I brought Brooke to the team, I kind of noticed her different leadership abilities. And I think the beautiful thing about our friendship is we're able to kind of switch back and forth between professional mode and friend mode. And so it's when it's time to lock in and focus on how are we going to get this done, who's going to do what work, we're very good at focusing on that. And so I think that's kind of what made it so find its rhythm, I guess you could say,
Yeah. We both just have a lot of respect for each other. And I feel that comes from being on a team together. She's my best friend. I don't know. We just communicate really well, which I think is so important in a professional setting. And so, being able to kind of switch back and forth from BFFs to, business partners is right. Something that we've worked on and that we're really proud of that relationship.
I would say that you both remind me of two other sets, the fabulous founders of Avant Genomics, and then also Sophie and Leah Guzman over at College Contact.
Yeah.
College Connect, I have utmost respect for all of them, but it's that same thing. And I think what you've talked about, there's something bigger than you that you're working towards. And so when that's the case and you put that in the center, your ego, I have found, kind of shuts up.
Oh, 100%. When you see how many people you're helping, it's like, Avery, this is bigger than this. Let's just figure out how to get it done. We'll worry about us later. And I also think one thing, we haven't touched on, but I'm studying business, supply chain management, finance, that kind of side of things. Yes. Avery's interested in public health, healthcare. So I think, those two interests, they go perfectly together for something like this.
Yes.
There's a lot of coordinating.
Right.
Obviously, the whole thing is around public health, but there's also the supply and demand, supply chain management, logistics of everything. So I think we work really well together in that sense too.
Kind of different aspects. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is great. And probably each of you are like, okay, no, you go. You take
exactly.
You're taking up with that. Yeah. Thank God. I don't want to touch it. Well, so those are, some of the strengths you've discovered. Are there other strengths you've discovered in yourselves as leaders that you didn't know you had at the start?
Yeah, I think everyone kind of as a teenager goes through an awkward phase, I have to go talk to this new person, or, oh, does this text sound awkward? Kind of that stuff that you think matters, but doesn't really. And I think definitely through this organization, you just have to put those anxious tendencies aside and be like, hey, it's so true when people say that your network is your net worth, and that truly that the connections that you make and the people you reach out to, those are where the opportunities come from. And so I think that by becoming a leader at EmpowerHer, it's really taught me not only with public speaking, but also just knowing how to have professional conversations with people and knowing who to reach out to and knowing that there are people do want to support your mission. And it's just you really just have to build up your network because there are so many helpful people out there that you can also help yourself with your organization.
True.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think for me, I So I started working with EmpowerHer before I started my marketing business. And so I think I've just learned the power of spreading awareness and how much that can do. And so we have people come to us all the time saying, oh, how can we help? How can we help? But of course, they don't want to give us money. They don't want to, donate any products, which is totally fine. But there's so many ways that you can help without providing something that's material. And so I think showing people, like, for example, you saw, EmpowerHer on LinkedIn from a flyer that I made. And so I think that's kind of something that I've learned is the power of community support and how to leverage that. And on the other side of things, again, from somebody studying supply chain management, I've kind of learned the struggle of making sure you don't kind of overpromise on products. And that's been something that we've had to talk about a lot is, obviously we've evaluated that there is a need for these products, but we have to be really careful about, making sure that we're bringing in as much as we're putting out, and also making sure that we're like the two of us are able to, do all of that. Because as we've expanded through Central Virginia, it's been like I said, a lot of long car rides providing all these products. And so I think I've just learned the power of, like I said, effective communication, the importance of marketing, and just being able to make sure that, you can deliver on what you say you're going to.
Absolutely, especially with something like this. And Avery, I'm going to build on two things you brought up. Also, I would believe that you've probably really come to realize resilience, right? Mm-hmm. And when you get those no's, oh my gosh, at first it could be just crushing. But then in hindsight, my experience has been, I realized, oh, okay, I would have been a waste of my time anyway.
Exactly.
Especially with something like this.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, you only need one yes. That's all you need is one yes, and then opens up a million more doors, windows, ceilings, whatever you want to say. It opens up so many more opportunities. And so I just think that by continuing and pushing forward, no matter how many no's you get or how many responses you don't get or how many weird glares you look for carrying all these products throughout school, I'm just like, you know what? Like, that's just what you got to do.
Yeah.
There's such a stigma, especially like when you're in that sophomore, junior year of high school of, why are you guys just doing National Honor Society? Like, why are you starting your own club? You know what I mean? Like there's kind of this unspoken route that you're supposed to take in order to, have a good resume, whatever. So I think it's balancing. We've kind of learned to balance the stigma around like people our own age and how, I think a lot of people our age, if they knocked on a door asking for a box of tampons, like, and somebody said no, like, yes, that is humiliating, but we've just moved past it. Like, it really doesn't bother us anymore because we're like, okay, well, we'll just go ask somebody else. So I think that's just been something that we've learned and I think we'll take into our lives. Honestly, I think that's just such a valuable skill to have is the power of just being okay with a no and understanding that, like it's just redirection, right? Like it doesn't always have to be rejection.
Exactly. And I will say it's really, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm gonna, I being the age I am, I have heard the whole thing of, your network is so important, one yes, et cetera. And really the reason why that one yes is you need that one yes is that person's network is going to be more likely to share the values that yes just does.
Exactly.
So you're going to have a whole slew of additional yeses that kind of happen again and again and again. So,
and I think that's definitely a big part of something that we've realized as EmpowerHer has grown is that there are going to be people that judge you or say no, but in the end, all the support and all the yeses and all the donations outweigh anything that could be negative.
Also, all the thank yous that we get for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, so speaking of support, how could listeners who want to support this, menstrual and hygiene equity, what's one meaningful action they can take this week to make a difference in their own community? I'm going to be having links, of course, with regards to yours, but suggestions?
I think, if it's around menstrual equity, if it's around something like we're doing, I think, if there's not something like EmpowerHer around you, there's nothing stopping you from starting it. I know it's just like you said earlier. I know there's so many big problems out in the world that's like, oh, I don't even know where to start. Even if it's just like, going to the store, buying 2 boxes of tampons and like dropping it off at the school nurse, like that's something, right? And that makes you, feel better about yourself and feel better about the problem that you're, trying to solve. And so I think just not being overwhelmed. But like I've touched on a lot, there's so many things you can do that are completely free. Like if you want to go follow us on Instagram, if you want to, like our post, repost, any type of like digital networking is super important and eventually, filters a way to actual like meaningful change. And so I think just and this doesn't even have to go for menstrual equity. Like it could be something like, I don't know, say you're interested in climate change and you're like, how the heck am I going to solve climate change all by myself? Go research and educate yourself on these topics that you're interested in, and then go follow, groups and clubs and see, like, join clubs, go to conferences, like anything that you're interested in, just run with it and just kind of learn as much as you can about it. I think Avery and I, we would have never gone this far with EmpowerHer if we didn't put the research in and understand and gauge the scope of the problem. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's so important to research and learn. And then, if there's something you're interested in, go find something to do with it. Even if it doesn't exist, there's nothing wrong with starting something from scratch like Avery did.
Right. And I think that kind of what Brooke was saying is that like a lot of problems can feel impossible. And it's like, how am I even supposed to contribute to this? Mm-hmm. But I think a big part of it is just finding different organizations and missions, because if before I started Empower, I had no idea of how many different resources and opportunities were in Charlottesville itself. And I think once you actually put in the research and just start emailing people or signing up for things, that's when you can truly make a difference. And you feel like you're making a difference because you are contributing. And so I just think like sometimes you just have to start from nothing, and that's where the most impact can be created.
True, because the baseline can only go up, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the worst case scenario of starting a club? Okay, you don't really get any traction. All right, well, at least you tried. Best case scenario, it turns into this big organization. You're turning it into a nonprofit. You're helping, thousands of students. Like, it really, you can't let the fear of failure stop you from, trying to create change. And I think that's something that we've really learned, and I'm going to take with me, in a professional setting and also just like throughout the rest of my life.
Well, and the truth is, to your point, you know what's going to happen if you do nothing, absolutely nothing. So
right, exactly. So you might as well.
Might as well. Okay, so in closing, you two, and I feel funny asking you this. Actually, I'm going to say this a different way, because so much, throughout our conversation, I'm just realizing how this is just such a metaphor and kind of an example of so much what older generation, middle generation, all this, as we step beyond college out into the work world, experiences so many of these life lessons we actually started learning so much earlier, but we never put it through that lens. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your older self? Because I often ask that question as, what advice would you give your younger self? Yeah. But I think you have such courage and wisdom. Your older self might need to be reminded of some of this.
I think for me, I would say the older I've gotten, the more pressure, like, I found myself in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the older I've gotten, the more big girl things I'm starting to handle. And so I think I would just remind my older self that the pressure that you're experiencing is a privilege. And that means it's okay that things are expected of you. And it's okay to be realistic. It's okay if you make a mistake. I know Avery and I both are perfectionists. That's why we get along. But I think we get sometimes hyper-focused on not making a mistake, but sometimes it's almost faster just to make it and learn from it and move on. And so I think just, I would just say continue to try new things. And if they don't work, it's okay. Like, it's part of life. Yeah. And I never want to get like too stuck in my ways to not, change the way I'm doing something.
Mm-hmm. I would say I definitely want to make sure I take a lot of the values that I've learned from EmpowerHer and continue to add them to my everyday life. But I feel like when starting something like EmpowerHer, and something that I want to keep in my mind as I grow older, is something like, just because something is, how should I say this? Like, it's not hard, it's just new. It's just different. And I think as people, we tend to get stuck in our routines because that's what's comfortable, but you're not going to make any change by being comfortable. And kind of what Brooke was saying is that, like, you have to make mistakes to learn. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable, because that's how you raise the bar. That's how you raise the standard. And so I think whether that's in small everyday life or bigger organizations like EmpowerHer, that's what you have to remember, is that it's not going to feel comfortable. It's not going to feel easy. It's something different and something new. It's something you've never done before. So you just have to understand that it's not going to always be comfortable.
And that's how you grow. That's where the growth is, right?
Exactly.
I think so. It's a very good point. I think so often we forget that, or we spend time sort of bandying about between being bored because we're so comfortable, and then we say, okay, toss that away. I want to go do something new. And then we complain about it being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Take your pain. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Take your pain. Beautifully put. Oh my gosh. Avery, Brooke, thank you so much.
Of course.
I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And I particularly appreciate the inspiration that you're about to give and you just have given all of the Women Advancing listeners.
Thank you.
So to the listeners, let's get on it, everybody. Including links. I expect to hear about brand new chapters opening everywhere.
Yes,
But
we'll
also,
send the links to all of our social media. We keep everything kind of informed on there. We're also doing a campaign in 2026 to turn EmpowerHer into an official nonprofit, which will make us more applicable for actual grants. So that's something that we have going on in GoFundMe. So yeah, if you're willing to help us out, even if it's just a follow, you don't even have to donate anything.
Everything else.
awesome. All right. Well, thank you both. I so appreciate you.
Thank you.
Until next time. Hey, everyone. Didn't you find that your mind kept going and realizing, like mine did, this is so relevant, and it revealed such a through line through all of our lives from when we were younger to now. We've been going through some of these same cycles again and again from a workplace standpoint. So KB takeaways from Avery and Brooke, who are doing such amazing work educating and giving greater access to feminine hygiene products, but also broadening education and doing some deep intergenerational and multicultural healing. You know, your network is your net worth. The reason why that's so important, yes, we all know you just need one yes. The reason why is that, yes, those people share your values. Most likely, the greater of their network will share your values as well. So fish where the fish are. Gosh, just start. You know, I think sometimes we're so overcome and overwhelmed when we see these market gaps, and then we realize, oh my gosh, it is an opportunity. Just start one step at a time. That's all it's going to take. You're going to get more and more information along the way as you do. In this day and age of everyone being so concerned about remaining relevant and not being displaced by either another younger workforce coming in, a new technology coming in, keep stretching yourself, right? The quickest way to becoming irrelevant is getting stuck in your ways and letting inertia stop you. And finally, because as you start those new things, it's going to be uncomfortable. Just remember, it's not really that hard. It's just new. And as you stick with it, you're eventually going to find yourself in the pocket, in the groove. So with that, thank you so much, as always, for spending time with me and with my guests. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Till next time.